Welcome! Today, we're decoding China's fiscal data for the first 3 quarters of the year. Our goal here is to get past the headline numbers and really dig into the underlying policy signals and the structural shifts that are currently shaping the world's second largest economy. So let's get straight to the point. Our analysis points to 3 core signals that you need to be aware of. First, despite what looks like muted revenue growth, the fiscal stance is clearly expansionary. Second, when you look at the tax data, a very distinct dual-speed or K-shaped economy comes into focus. And third, policymakers are actively building what we're calling a fiscal bridge to carry economic momentum right into 2026. These are the key takeaways that tell the real story behind the numbers. Here's how we'll break it down today. We're going to start by decoding the national public budget. Then we'll dive into the evidence for that bifurcated economy I just mentioned. After that, we'll look at the debt-driven engine that's supporting growth. And we'll wrap up by analyzing that fiscal bridge strategy. All right, first things first. We need to look beyond that surface-level revenue figure to truly understand the fiscal impulse that's being injected into the economy right now. And what's immediately striking here is the significant gap between revenue and expenditure. You can see general public budget revenue grew by just 0.5% year-on-year. Meanwhile, expenditure grew by 3.1%. That divergence is the first clear signal of an active and indeed expansionary fiscal policy. Let me put that into perspective for you. The rate of spending growth is 6 times the rate of revenue growth. Now, this isn't an accident. This signals a very deliberate policy choice to keep spending up to support economic activity, even with revenues being nearly flat. Now, if we dig just a little deeper, the story gets even more interesting. You can see that central government spending grew at 7.3%. That's nearly triple the pace of local governments. This points to a strategic shift, with the central government shouldering more of the spending to get around local fiscal issues and make sure national priorities are being met. Okay, moving on to our second theme. If you want a real-time view into which sectors are healthy, tax receipts are the place to look. And what they're showing isn't a uniform recovery at all. It's something sharply bifurcated. This quote really sets the stage perfectly. You have to see the tax data through this lens. It reflects a major structural shift in the economy, guided by industrial policy, moving away from old growth drivers toward what's being officially called new quality productive forces. And the data absolutely bears this out. Take a look at the upper leg of this K-shaped recovery. Tax revenues from scientific research and tech services up 13.4%. Computer and communications equipment manufacturing, their tax receipts grew by 12%. These aren't small numbers. This is solid evidence that the national strategy to grow high-tech industries is getting tangible results. But of course, there's another side to this story. The lower leg of the K is just as clear, and it's all about the property sector. Land value-added tax, down almost 18%. The deed tax on property sales, down nearly 15%. This really highlights the persistent drag from real estate and confirms that dual-speed nature of the economy we've been talking about. Now, amid this very divergent picture, there is one data point that just jumps off the page. It's an anomaly, a growth figure of over 100%. The immediate question is, what on earth is driving this? So what's behind this incredible surge? Well, this figure represents a 103.4% year-on-year jump in the securities transaction stamp duty. Now, critically, this reflects an exceptionally high level of market turnover, not necessarily a strong bull market. For investors, what this points to is significant liquidity sloshing around in the financial system, and that's a key dynamic to keep an eye on. Okay, this brings us to the third part of our analysis, and it's a crucial one. To really grasp the full scale of this fiscal expansion, we have to look at the government-managed funds budget. You can think of it as a second ledger. So what is this second ledger? Well, historically, it was funded by land sales. But with that revenue source under pressure, it's now become the main vehicle for debt-fueled stimulus, funding major infrastructure and other strategic projects. This is where the most significant fiscal push is happening right now. And this is where the numbers become incredibly stark. As you can see, fund revenues actually declined slightly, driven by a drop in land sales. But look at the other side. Expenditures grew by a massive 23.9%. This gap is the clearest evidence you'll find of just how much the current growth model relies on public investment. So how is this gap being funded? Well, the answer is clear: debt. The Ministry of Finance has confirmed the spending is being driven by accelerated issuance of local government special bonds and treasury bonds. In effect, public debt is being deployed to fill the hole left by the property sector's decline. All right, for our final section, let's look ahead. We're going to analyze the forward-looking signals from official statements, which really point to a coordinated strategy to lock in economic stability. We're calling this strategy the fiscal bridge. Essentially, it's a set of policy actions designed to prevent that typical year-end slowdown and New Year lag in public investment. The whole idea is to create a continuous, seamless flow of fiscal support from the end of this year into the beginning of the next. And this bridge is built on two main pillars. First, they're deploying 500 billion yuan from the existing local government debt balance to support Q4 right now. Second, they're pre-allocating part of the 2026 new bond quotas, which ensures funding is ready to go for projects at the very start of next year. And we don't have to guess at the intention here. The Ministry of Finance has been quite clear. They said, and I quote, "This approach allows for the early launch of key projects in the first quarter of 2026, supporting the continuous recovery of the economy." So the strategy is explicitly about smoothing out that investment cycle. So what does a strategy like this signal to the market? Well, a few things. It shows a shift from reactive to proactive economic management. It signals a clear commitment to avoiding a fiscal cliff between years. And maybe most importantly, it provides a more predictable policy path, which is absolutely critical for business confidence. So to wrap this all up, the Q3 fiscal data reveals a very clear economic strategy. It's reliant on targeted debt-fueled spending to support a massive structural transition. This fiscal bridge into 2026 underscores a deep commitment to stability. But this all leads to the critical question, will this bridge be strong enough to navigate the much longer-term challenges of China's economic rebalancing? That remains the key variable to watch.